brilliant minds, caring and determined to change the world. And I only hope that I can work up to your expectations and do everything that I can to help you support your mission. I have experience in regulatory industries, some experience with legal processes and nonprofit organizations, and I believe that's why David asked me to speak today. I want to assure you that my remarks will be thought-provoking and a little bit advisory, but they aren't going to be all-inclusive. Even though David always overpromises, I'm afraid today I may under-deliver a little bit, but we'll have a Q&A at the end, and if there are questions or concerns that haven't been covered thoroughly, we'll either address those then or we'll certainly find out the answers. I've met some of you in working with David and being here in Dallas from time to time. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. My husband is here with me today. And since this is the closest I'll ever get to the Academy Awards, I have to say thank you, Jim, for all the support that you give me, because without you, I would not be able to do all the things that I have done in my life, and I don't say that often enough. So now, if you don't mind, I'm going to step over to my slides so we can run those, and thank you very much. I was trying to think today about how I would speak about compliance, rules, and regulations. I don't know about you, but that's usually the least popular topic with people in business and organizations. It can be dry. Some people feel like it's limiting. So no one really wants to talk about those things most of the time. And when issues come up, many times people feel like they're being criticized. But in fact, when you consider these rules in the beginning and plan with those in mind, there are fewer missteps, which means everyone is able to accomplish their goals more quickly, more effectively, and with less effort. In working with David, I've worked a lot with communications, and I guess I'm reminded that in a world where communications travel fast and people network across the globe, there are limitless opportunities. When we work hard and create value with our hands and our hearts, and nonprofits truly require both. There's a lot of effort that goes into creating these organizations, and also this tells me a lot on a Saturday of a holiday weekend that people came here today to discuss these topics when I'm sure you had many other options. In fact, many people traveled many miles to come here today. When you make a commitment like the commitment that's been made, David said that people have been working for about 6 months on the projects, 10 months on the projects. A lot of time has been spent, and I'm sure money has been spent, and dreams have been discussed, and efforts has been made. So there's a reason to try to protect those things at the outset, and that's what we're talking about today. At this point, in order to maximize the impact and also the reach of the organization, I believe David and a team of people worked on filing in Texas, the nonprofit organization and has also completed the paperwork to become a 501c3 organization. As David mentioned, that's in progress right now. A lot of questions have already been answered, and it's a very important process. Such a status is very valuable. There are many benefits. For one thing, when people donate, it's tax advantaged. When purchases are made, they're not taxable. There are many people that are involved in foundations, family foundations, government organizations that prefer and sometimes, thank you, and sometimes will only donate or write grants with organizations that have already been vetted and have a 501c3 designation. And there's also a lot of public credibility that comes with that. I mean, I hear all the time when an organization is a 501c3, I mean, people throw that around, you'll see it on websites. It means something to people. With the benefits are some limitations and restrictions, and some of these are obvious. Sources of income, meeting content, educational programs, publications, political activities. There are limitations on those. We'll discuss that a little bit more in a moment. Standard setting. So a lot has to be considered. And when people don't follow the regulations, they don't follow the rules, then there can be sanctions and you can actually lose your status. And, not only is that disappointing, it's also embarrassing. And people that have been affiliated, are leaders of the organization. I mean, it can truly be a very negative thing for those individuals trying to organize a new organization. So it's in everyone's best interest to consider. In addition to the regulations, there are just some things that are considered best practices. And, they're very similar in business, whether your business is a nonprofit or a for-profit. I'm going to mention some of those. For example, in finance, pre-approval of expenditures, reimbursement with receipt, timely submission, relationships. Nonprofits and 501c3 organizations should avoid conflict of interest situations. And that can be very tricky because most of the people that are involved in these organizations, particularly together. Thank you.
OFSC, Office of Foreign Asset Control. If you do business in a country, know who you are working with, how much you are just paid for. Otherwise, you'll be in trouble. Because you may be spending money guidelines to make sure we do not depart from universities. And Pieter from University of North Texas, the largest campus in DFW, you beat UPA by 4,000.
Labor-focused town, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my jacket off because I don't wear a jacket a lot, right? I'm a working kind of guy. All right, so thank you, Chairman David. Thank you, President Patrick. I'm trying to do the alliteration there, right? President Patrick. Honorable Ambassador John. It's wonderful to be with you guys. Why do I give up my Saturday afternoon to be with you? Very simple. My role at the University of North Texas is I'm the Senior Director responsible for international student recruitment. And so what my team and I do is we spend all day, most of the night, giving good information to potential students about studying in the U.S., and in particular about studying at the University of North Texas. And we cannot do this alone. No one wakes up halfway around the world and thinks, oh, I'm going to uproot my life and I'm going to go to Dallas, Texas, and that's where I'm going to go study, right? No one does that on their own. So there's always people, which we call recommenders, who put this thought in their mind, who help reassure that they're on the right track when they make that decision, who provide encouragement, who provide funding, who provide good information. And many of those people we call the aunties and uncles. Guess what? That's you, right? Because you are very much part of that equation guiding our students to come here, right? When they're in Entebbe, when they're in Kampala, they know a little bit about Dallas, and it probably has to do with basketball, right? But they know very little about what it takes, what's the process, how do you apply, where do you find funding, how do you get admitted, all that good stuff. And that is where there's a partnership with you who help that with that encouragement, and with my team where we help guide with the process, and we make what is frankly a very bureaucratic process a simple one. Because oh my goodness, universities in the US, especially the big public ones like where I am at, boy, we make things complicated. We have an abbreviation for everything. We have a deadline for everything. We have a form to fill out for everything. And so we put in place plenty of hurdles ourselves for students to succeed in finally coming here. That's where my team comes in, where we work with yourselves, with your cousins, with all the folks back home to help make this process a simple process. University of North Texas, we're one of the largest public universities in the US. We're a massive school, 48,000 students at the moment. We have about 8,500 students from all over the world. We have 2 students from Uganda. All right. So your colleague Henry said it starts with the first step. Well, there's the first step, my friend. Right? Here's your challenge. Many of my colleagues, even in our international office, would struggle to point out Uganda on a map. When they look at a map of Africa, they may think that Lake Victoria is a hole in the map, right? That's how little knowledge there is of Africa. Then comes the next challenge. In that little bit of knowledge that there is of Africa, often the first contact that many of my colleagues in our office have had with folks from Africa is out of West Africa. Right? So Dallas alone has a massive Nigerian diaspora community. And in the balance of international students in the US, there are 17,500, and that's where my team is inviting you to partner with us. So a first step in that process is to go and dispel ignorance, right? Many of my colleagues, even in our international office, are a bit sketchy on where Uganda is, what the talent is from there, how do we even reach out and work with you. And so the next step is that I'm going to invite your leadership and some of your officers to come join us at the university. We'll do a nice event for you. And we'll start with just introducing you to some of the deans, some of the departments, so that the academic leadership of the university has a better sense of this massive Ugandan community that's right here on our doorstep, and where the opportunities lie to collaborate together.
Thank you.
What is the status of special education or special needs in Uganda? It's one of those questions that keeps wandering in my mind. If I remember the days that I was growing up, whenever a child or any other student in class did not understand anything, our teacher would use a big stick. So we got beaten to think. You basically had to undergo a gruesome education system whereby you are forced to think. But when I started teaching special education, I realized there are several policies that relate to special education and special need. Actually, some of the students who face the most difficult time in Uganda have actually learning disabilities. But because the teachers love that experience of working and interacting with special education students, the big stick is the solution, which is not actually the avenue we take when we look at special education here. Now, the picture really kicked in when I was reading a program about special education. Teachers would put students who are stubborn outside of the class, and they would teach while the students are outside. And that is secluding the students from participating in an inclusive environment. However, the Ugandan government came up with a policy of inclusion, which allows students to be included in class, despite the fact that they are having learning disabilities or dyslexia, or even have attention hyperactive disorder. Now, our biggest issue comes in is how much do we spend in comparison to most developed nations in special education. For a country like Uganda, we spend only 1% of our education budget in special education. But you find about 16% of the children have disabilities or are not able to attend school because of special need. And if you go find the countryside, you'll probably find that there are children who are not going to school just because the parents think they're crazy, or the relatives have actually, for some reason, decided to label the child as this one cannot read, this one cannot talk, this one cannot understand. So we actually have a large population of people who are not able to go to school based on disability. It's important to realize that pre-primary school education, 1.6 of our students have an impairment. Out of that, mental impairment is about 28%. These are areas we need to touch. Hearing impairment is 25%. Visual impairment is 22%. Physical impairment is 17.9%, and autism is 5%. Multiple disabilities, which is actually multiple handicap, the individuals who are handicapped, use a wheelchair, and probably have maybe dyslexia, or have other kind of learning disabilities that makes it multiple, they have no way out. Now, the main reason why I'm bringing this is, how can we create education equity in Uganda? How are we going to do that? Are we going to put money into schools to make it happen? Or are we going to change the funding level of special education in Uganda. My biggest goal is to see that we have as many teachers as possible to be trained in special education so that we know how to handle the needs of our students who are having learning disabilities. So that we don't have a maligned population who are left out, who cannot be supported in any form whatsoever. Now, the training of special education teachers is the priority that we have in the Ugandan American diaspora community. We want to find an opportunity to be able to train at least 10 teachers every year in postgraduate special education program in the United States. It may look so small for a big country like Uganda, but that's one step to walk our 1,000 miles every one. And two, we also need to find programs that we can initiate at home. Take, for example, physical impairment will require a student to have a wheelchair. But if you're walking in the city, you might end up finding the children who are in wheelchairs are beggars in the street. It's possible to have wheelchair donations from here, United States, that we can ship home for our schools with students with disabilities. It is possible for us to have a diagnostic program in which we can diagnose hearing impaired, to have students who have learning disabilities or have hearing impairment to have a hearing aid. It is possible. This is a gap that we can do as a community to see a difference, that we can create an impact to our learning. And then we need to take the opportunity to have cross-training of our students. If we educate them, where do they go? Our biggest problem at home is employment. Even teachers sometimes don't have jobs. But we can't leave it that way. We can initiate programs that will help cross-train students in technical field. In the United States, if you go to the EMS center, you'll find at least a high percentage of people working in the EMS center, the dispatch center, are people with disabilities. But they're able to take 911 calls, sit and work all day to save a life. That's something we can do for our people at home. We can create technical schools, transition services, in which we channel our young learners to become technicians, responders to EMS. These are things that are possible. Just like Peter said, we have a very high population of young generation. But many of them, as you can see, have difficulties getting by. And that population is growing by the day. And if we don't do anything right now, we probably wouldn't. So this is an important journey that we've started as Uadc to tap into areas that are quite critical and vital for our population. I wouldn't say too much. I'll thank you all. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. I hope we'll be seeing special education create an equity in our population. Thank you.
Programs, where did Peter go? Oh, Peter. But UTD and Stephen Austin University, we are going to talk about how we can put in place online learning, distance learning, and how you can actually be in Uganda and finish your Bachelor of Science degree at UTD without coming to the US. They already implemented several programs. There is a program between Uganda and the University of Edinburgh in the UK. You can do almost every degree without ever going to the UK. The Uganda Christian University had a program with UD here, and that's how they started most of their programs in business and the MIS. So I'm hoping to work with these guys. I've taught classes at UTD, I've taught classes at UTA, and I taught for 5 years at Brookhaven, in addition to teaching that for 9 years at George Washington University in continuing engineering education. So I'm concentrating on university education, while Henry will work with me, and I concentrate on special education. We have our next speaker as Asa Musasisi, who is also working with Emun as our IT development guy. Alan, you are the next? Okay. I guess Musasisi is not going to be here. Alan and Ronnie are going to talk about the role of technology in human development. These are young guys with brilliant ideas. I just met Alan. Alan is has his own company which develops educational software, and he's going to brief us how it works and how we can use it with the Uadc.
Thanks, David, and thanks everybody for being here. Good afternoon. My name is Alan Mishabi. I am the founder of Uadc. And basically, what we do is we're a software company. We focus primarily on helping organizations develop and build their own training and learning platforms, and basically helping them to go digital, essentially. So how it basically started off was I actually started working extensively in telecommunications. This is back in South Africa. And what we found was that there are opportunities for us to basically make use of technology and IT in order to advance the development of essentially the African people in general, especially around workforce and education. One of the key areas that we always thought was quite a challenge is how to get quality education to people no matter where they may be. And so while being in telecommunications, I basically came up with a concept to say, how can we leverage that as much as possible in order to actually build out services that can be distributed remotely from pretty much anywhere in the country. And hence how we started off with Lightbulb. I'm just going to go into a very, very high-level presentation on what the platform does and what we actually do as an organization. And then you can, if there's any questions, I'm more than happy to go through it. So you can go to the next one. Let's see. No, just scroll down a bit. Okay, so basically, sorry, I just want to see if I can just do it this way. There we go. I'll just move on. Thanks. Okay, so just some background about us. So essentially what we are is a group of engineers that we put together, and what we try to do is focus on our strengths in different areas. So software engineering, telecommunications, and then also content design and content development. And basically what we came up with was a concept to basically see how we can actually help organizing both institutions and corporates alike in terms of how best to migrate or develop or deploy their services on a training platform. And that's essentially the core vision that we basically try to follow. In terms of just some key aspects of our vision, ignite the world of learning through innovative technology. The mission is basically to power learning experiences through technology-led, tailor-made training and data-driven analytics. That's actually quite key, and I'm sure Ronnie will also talk more about the data analytics aspect of things and how important it is in the overall experience of what we do today in this sort of internet age, as we say. And our purpose is to unlock potential of the human learning and creating an online learning experience as best as possible. Okay, so just in terms of like some of the key problems that we try to focus on, number one is access to high quality, easy to use online learning systems are very difficult. Low computer literacy, depending on where you may be, can be even, not just in Africa, but pretty much across the world, has been quite a key issue that we've had to deal with. And that also leads to very low adoption of these online systems, essentially, because most people have never ever used an email before. The basic knowledge of technology pretty much stems from just maybe like a smartphone at best. And that's majority of the workforce if you look at it from a global population at the end of the day. And then the other aspect is that there's a very low digital transformation of a lot of industries. I've come across companies where their operating procedures are still based on systems from the 1970s and 80s. And unfortunately, when you're working with like a younger workforce, they're more used to more digitally inclined systems. So when you're trying to merge those two, it becomes very complicated at the end of the day. So what we do is we provide an all-in-one virtual learning environment. So basically we'll build it from scratch for the client. And then in terms of the solutions, we try to make sure that they're customizable. We make sure that they're mobile friendly, so because the majority of the users will probably access it via a mobile device. And then in terms of like support, we provide 3 tiers, which is administration, technical, and content development support. So we try to make sure that we cover the entire breadth of the requirements for the client at the end of the day. And then in terms of like just some of the benefits we've seen by utilizing these type of services, 40% less risk of injury, decreases in security incidents, cutting costs, especially around time and reducing the actual cost of deployments of training and services. And then 8 out of 10 of the users have access to devices essentially, which is also quite important for us at the end of the day. And that's where we try to leverage the technology as best as possible in order to deliver quality education to everybody that we can. And then in terms of that, we also keep track of all the progress. We can get absolute data points from somebody like pressing a button to logging in to completing an assessment to watching a training video, to name a few. And these are some of the key features on the platform. We try to make sure that it's very easy to use. One of the key benefits for us is we focus a lot on gamification, basically making sure that the content that's being deployed on these platforms is interactive and actually appropriate for the end users in order to ensure that they actually learn effectively. And then obviously the analytics tools are quite key for us. And what we also try to do within our platform is to try and make everything in one place. So you not just have the content on demand aspects of things, but you also have the integrated live engagements as well. So we have effectively like our own version of a Teams and Zoom component, so allowing you to do real-time engagements with all the users at once. So I just want to go down a bit more. And then obviously this is more background on mobile friendliness. And we can just go a bit more. These are some examples of that, and just some examples of some of the gamification. It's not too clear there, but maybe you can. All right, no worries. You can just. I think most will get the idea on that one. And then in terms of some of the content development aspects, we focus a lot on trying to make things a little bit more engaging in a digital framework. So we utilize aspects such as augmented reality, virtual reality, animation, and also game development. We have a lot of companies that we partner with who are very good at taking a concept and converting it into more interactive engagement, which is normally in terms of like a game as an example, with activities which basically help you to learn and understand what the environment is like. So a typical example is we've had one where if you're working at heights as an example and you are working either in a plant or a construction site, and what we'll do is we'll put together a virtual reality headset and that'll simulate the entire environment for you. So in case you don't put the right strap on your virtual hull and you accidentally fall, you're falling in virtual reality, but you're not going to get injured at the end of the day. So that's one of the key things about it, is to try and like simulate a dangerous environment for you to actually get the best training possible without expending an entire structure that you need to then go and build and deploy. Okay. And then in terms of the business intelligence, and I know that as I like to run, I will go more into these type of, I don't want to take away too much from him, but in terms of the business intelligence, we can cover a whole range of events and put together very dynamic reporting. If an organization wants to know in which region has the highest number of risk-associated events within their organization based on understanding, we can actually pull those reports quite quickly and effectively, and then the end client or the end user can then look at that and see where they need to make changes or put together more drastic interventions at the end of the day. So that's one of the key benefits of the business intelligence side of things. So just a very high level in terms of the market context. So we fall under the management systems side of technology. So that's just a graph that basically illustrates that. I'm going to go down a bit more. So again, this is the competitive analysis. So some of the key guys that we've kind of worked, that we would basically be against, especially globally, are guys like Google Classroom, Moodle, Blackboard, Design to Learn, but the ones that we focus heavily on are primarily Talent, iSpring, and SkyPrep. And then this graph shows you a structure based on functionality versus usability. So one of the key things that we try to do, as highlighted, is majority of the users we understand are not necessarily computer literate, so we try to make the system as user-friendly as possible. I know most people, if you give them an Excel program, majority of the people won't even know how to switch that on and make that work effectively, and that's one of the key issues that happens with a lot of the developments or the systems that are out there. So we understand that, hey, a lot of the guys might not have a college education or even sometimes even a high school degree. So we try to make the system as simple as possible in order to ensure that we get the maximum out of the services that we deploy. And in terms of some of the competitive advantages, so all the communication tools in one place, so on-demand streaming and development. The in-house content development support is quite key. And then also we are quite keen on making sure that the mobile internet users use the least amount of data possible. Back in South Africa and Africa in general, cost of data is expensive. So if you want to try and train as many people as possible, and if they have limited resources available, you want to try and make sure that you're using the maximum efficiencies possible. So that's one of the key benefits that we try to deploy, by making sure it's very low cost on the data side as well. And then also making sure that it's available on multi-devices. So it can be a Huawei phone, iPhone, Google, doesn't really matter. As long as you have access to a basic internet browser, you'll be able to access the platform effectively. And then in terms of some of the key additional benefits, obviously the comprehensive consulting, so we'd help a client by basically seeing how best to migrate their entire environment into a digital framework. We've worked with training companies, we've worked with manufacturing companies, telecommunications companies, we can work with pretty much a whole range of market verticals. It all depends on what they're looking to achieve and who the end users are at the end of the day. And then in terms of, that's the business intelligence, we can also design high-level reporting. And one of the key uses these days now is use of artificial intelligence to help you to basically create more diversified content as much as possible. And that's one of the fastest ways to do that, is by utilizing AI where possible. Okay, and then in terms of some of the key benefits and impact, if we look at the environmental, social, and governance goals, so we're looking at 4, 8, 9, and 10. And then in terms of artificial intelligence, that's one of the key benefits around that. We save a lot of time, reduce the costs, especially around logistics. You don't have to send people for training. They can literally do it on demand, or even while they're actually doing their jobs or tasks. And then one of the key benefits for us is the increased user engagement. That's one of the key benefits. We try to focus heavily on making sure they're interactive, so there's not a boring video that's just being played. There's interactions within each segment of the learning journey, which allows us the ability to first also collect the data, but also ensuring that the people actually complete the modules effectively. Okay, so I'm going to get a slide. Oh, sorry. Did you go back to the beginning? Sorry. So I'm going to scroll down a bit. No worries. Okay, cool. So over here, just some of the use cases that we've had. I don't know if you can see that. That is a little bit blurry, so I'm just going to try and just make sure that you can read each one. So the first one is basically to transform induction and onboarding. So any organization that has onboarding and induction training that needs to be done, we can utilize the platform for that. Anything which has to deal with compliance training, culture training, online learning is a very good way of deploying that. Also, when you're dealing with product and sales training, so anytime there's new products or services that need to be deployed, or new mechanisms and processes, one can basically utilize a framework like this to quickly deploy a new system out to as many people as possible. So if it is a new sort of manufacturing process that's being developed, you don't have to bring everybody in. You could just load it onto the platform and then push it out to everybody that's going to be affected by that particular process or product at the end of the day that's happening within the company. And let's go down a bit more. And then some of the other ones are also upskilling is one of the key ones. And then anything that has to do with remote learning. So if you have a number of branches, this is the fastest and effective way for you to deploy training to them as effectively as possible, essentially. And then obviously the one which is basically covered by everybody is education. So we've done quite a lot of work from early childhood development all the way through to higher education. Generally speaking, just want to highlight with the early childhood development side of things, you're normally working with the caregivers, not necessarily the actual kids themselves, because they're the ones who have access to the actual devices, and they can then simulate what needs to be done in the real world, essentially. Okay. And then just some key impacts.
Data can lead to more informed and objective decision making. I 100% agree. Data is supposed to be, and I say the word supposed because not always is it the case, but data is supposed to help drive decision making. And the key here is objective and informed, right? I believe the more people know and know full information, not half information, the better you can decide on things that do with your life, to do with your where you place you live, your career, everything. So I feel like data is definitely key in knowing. Before I even proceed, when I say data, people get confused and they think of computers, and data is information. So just information. Think of data as information as I go through these lists of perceptions. Number 2, accuracy, precision, and quality of data is crucial for reliable insights. So absolutely, right? It goes without saying, and I'm very particular about using those 3 descriptors. Accuracy, meaning the data is correct. Precision, meaning that it's repeatable, right? A lot of times people get it one right answer. Have you ever been on Google and you keep scrolling and scrolling until you find the one website that agrees with you? That's not really, it's accurate but not precise. So precision and accuracy cannot be separated. You gotta go together. And then of course quality. I'll get into more details about the quality, but that has to do with how did you collect the data? How did you process the data? What are some of the biases that the data came with? So, but all 3 of those are very important to reliable insights, right? At the end of the day, this information is supposed to help give you some basis to make information decisions, right? Number 3, large data sets can reveal patterns and trends that are not visible with smaller data sets. Absolutely. Theory of large numbers. With more experiments, you get closer to the true normal, right? For those physics people out there, I think one person may be in here, but anyways, you need more data. You need more examples, more experiments, even more diverse experiments before you can truly rely on the results. I wouldn't trust an outcome of a poll that was done by 10 people, right? If you're trying to survey, one of the issues facing the youth today, and your poll only has like 100 people, that would be a very reliable polling data, right? So you need more data to be able to rely on that. But again, I'll explain it in the future, but that data has to be collected correctly, right? I'll give you an example. This morning I was watching a video on YouTube. I was Vox, one of the YouTube channels that I follow, and it talked about how every year, and this is a true poll by Gallup, one of the trusted sites that does polling. Every year, Americans are asked the same question, do you feel safer? And every year, over 75% of Americans feel that they're not safer than the previous year, which means they feel that crime is going up. However, the data does not quite show that. If you actually look at the data, what we can see in the data is there's been a trend downwards each year, meaning less crime, right? Now, of course, if you had an experience with crime, even one event is more than enough for you to feel not safe. But I'm talking about from an overall perspective, holistically, we've actually been declining quite significantly year over year. However, if you ask people, they'll say, no, every year it's worse. So what do you say about that? And I'll talk more about kind of the differences in how the reality and perception kind of fight this whole battle of truth. So, let's see, what else? Growing importance of data privacy and security. We always hear stories about, breaches and companies losing people's information, leaking out there, or you might get, people worried about being hacked. There is a growing problem right now. A lot of the systems that we have, phones and all the websites, we're kind of moving too fast to put guardrails in place. And there's an issue in all the governments and all these other companies to decide what they're going to build as far as protecting. What is their responsibility? What is their, who bears the burden of protecting our information, right? People always say, oh, when you post something on Facebook or Instagram, you should expect it to be leaked everywhere. But not really, right? There has to be a level of privacy that is expected. So we got to pressure politicians and people that are entrepreneurs to really protect our information. So there's a very growing desire for that. And last but not least, raw data alone is not enough. It requires proper analysis, interpretation to be useful. Those are all the correct perceptions. Now, for the fun part, what are some of the incorrect perceptions people have about data? Data always tells the truth. That's not true. Data can be misleading, right? If it's not properly contextualized, or if it has bias, or if it's incomplete. Bias can also be based out of how it was collected, processed, or interpreted. One of the funny stats I like to throw out is roughly 50% of marriages end in divorce. Google that, ChatGPT, it's a true number. What does that mean if you flip it on the side? Does it mean the other 50% of marriages end in death? So, you see, it's a pretty crazy thing to think about because there's only two ways to end a marriage, divorce or death. But if you don't contextualize something, it can really get scary when you think about the other side of that equation. So, numbers do not always tell the truth. The whole saying, women lie, men lie, numbers don't lie, well, they can lie if you don't understand the full details, the full context. The more data equals better insights. Now, that's kind of confusing, right? I just said earlier that large data is good. But just having more data does not mean automatically you're going to have better insights. So the quality, again, the relevance has to play a part. So it's quality over quantity, okay? Now, we do want quantity, but we want quantity, if that makes sense. Data analysis is easy. For those analysts out there, you've heard from someone say, oh, I can build this easily, right? No, it's not. It's always changing. Targets are always moving. Data is always incomplete or confusing or ambiguous. So data analysis is an ever-changing thing that is constantly evolving. And so it requires participation, right? One of the companies I work for